still with me is Patrik Hoffmann, the CEO of Ulysse Nardin. Patrik, let's touch on your first obsession when you realized you were actually very obsessed with watches. It actually came at a young age. Tell us about that first experience.
I was not obsessed yet. I was 16 years old.
Are you obsessed now though?
I am, yes. I would take watches apart. Of course, I couldn't put them together. So that's where the fascination started. I was more a number guy, so I had a degree in finance, but I worked for a watch company, and that's how the whole thing started.
So why did you go into finance?
I was a number guy. I was not a language guy, and I was an analytical guy, and still today, to a certain extent, I'm a very analytical thinking guy.
Do you understand watches quite well now? If you take your watch apart, would you be able to at least have an idea of how to put it back together?
I would know what all the parts are doing, but I couldn't put it together. I wouldn't have the patience to do it.
When it comes to leadership, because in a sense, I mean, this is what is really important to ensure that you lead a team in the right direction. It seems that you have this very important quality. Tell us about what actually defines you as a leader, and given the fact that you do have this very strong academic background, you are a numbers man,
right?
But you also have leadership qualities.
Right. I think my style, if I would say the style of leadership, is probably leading by example. So I don't ask people to do something I wouldn't do myself, you know. And I consider myself hardworking. I see myself as a leader of a team. I never really put myself in the foreground. I really think you need a team to lead a company at the end.
Was there any position that you were put in that actually compromised a lot of your values and your morals?
No, I don't want to do that at all, no. I don't think so.
What about in 2008 during the crisis? What difficult decisions did you need to make to ensure that the company pulled through?
We actually let a couple of people go. You know, we are now 450 people. We had to let go about 25 people. That's always very, very rough, I think, for everybody. The nice part about Switzerland is we have a safety net. We have a system in place in Switzerland which allows people to reduce their work. That means what we did, we let the people work only 50%, some of them only 60% for a period of about a year, which is a fantastic system in Switzerland because you don't lose know-how. There's so much know-how in our industry. If you let the people go, you cannot get them back and you lose know-how. And that safety system really helped us to go through the crisis.
A little earlier I was talking about the longevity of Swiss-made watches. It is all about the watchmakers. How do you create a breed of new Swiss watchmakers? Or do you think that, I mean, obviously succession planning here is just as important because your brand really relies on the quality of the product.
I mean, if you would go and walk through our company today and you would see the watchmakers working, I think the average age there is probably about 25 years old. So there's a
I pictured someone about 50, mid-50s with
not
glasses.
anymore, not anymore. We had a generation which is not there. You will hardly see a watchmaker in my age, for example. They're all much younger. We have probably 50% female watchmakers. So it's an industry now which is very, very young and attractive to a new generation.
How are you using the new technological advances within the innovation that we actually see coming through?
I always say, and I'm going to say that now publicly, that the Swiss watch industry is somewhat unsophisticated. What I mean with it is the way the watches are being put together are very traditional, very old-fashioned, I would say, because it's all handmade. But where the new technology comes in is material. We use new materials. In the case of Ulysse Nardin, we are the leaders of using silicium, which is a new material in the watch industry. We use rubber, we use ceramics. Those are materials which haven't been used in the past. So it's not in the way we produce the watches, it's the materials which we use, which are new and more sophisticated.
Is there a high churn within the watchmakers at your business? Are a lot of the people headhunted by other companies?
Yes, it is. There is a kind of a code which we have, you know, amongst the watchmakers or the watch industry where we are in the heart. But of course, yeah, there is still people trying to get other people from the companies. But in the case of Ulysse Nardin, we are a very interesting company to work with because we produce high complications, which means watchmakers that come to us very young, they have a way to move up in the company.
And what qualifications do they actually come with? What kind of qualification do you need to become a watchmaker?
Well, you have to be a good watchmaker to start with, and then you start producing normal movements, but then you can move up. We have some watches here at Bellagio here in South Africa, which we showed today, which are in the price range of 250 to 750,000 US dollars. To produce a watch, you have to be really qualified, and you have to learn that with practice. So, and they learn this within our company. They have a basic study, basic education, and then they practice. They have education within our company.
Tell us about the Chinese market, because it's very lucrative. You know, many companies say that if you've won the Chinese market over, then your brand is basically set in stone on a global level. What kind of market share do you have within this space?
I can tell you we have a very, very small market share there, because we are a small brand. And to be quite honest, there are a lot of watch companies that aspire to go in there. They spend a lot of money, they're investing, but there are not many brands so far that are really making money. They're really successful. So it is a market with a big potential, but it's also a dangerous market.
If you further commercialize this brand and make it even bigger, do you think that it is going to lose its sophistication and its mysterious elements that it has, that you were alluding to earlier?
Yeah, everything is relative. You know, we grew our company now over the last 2 years from 18,000 pieces to 25,000 pieces a year. We are probably going to go up in the next, I think, 4 or 5 years to 30,000 pieces. I think in that range of quantities, we are not going to lose our mystique. And we cannot grow faster without compromising our product, which means I don't see a growth bigger than 30,000 within the next decade, probably.
And what is the target beyond that? I mean, would you like to increase that number and head closer to perhaps the 50,000 level?
That's not on the drawing board yet, because we depend again on the watchmakers we can hire. And I can go from a marketing point of view or from a management point of view and say, okay, let's produce 30,000 watches next year instead of 25,000 watches this year. It's not possible because we don't have the people who could produce those watches.
Tell us about the supply-demand scenarios that are playing out, and given the fact, I mean, obviously supply is very minimal, as I mentioned, 25,000. You plan to hit that 30,000 level in a decade. Is there more demand than what there is supply? Are you finding that on the ground?
Yes, I think so. And if you would ask me what is the biggest challenge today, the biggest challenge is production. So the biggest challenge for us is to produce those 25,000 watches. It's not actually to sell them, it's to produce them.
Let's also just take a look at the overall vision of the company over the next 10 years. You mentioned increasing production. What kind of new territories would you want to head into? And Africa obviously being relatively untapped. So there's a lot of potential here, a lot of challenges that you need to overcome, but your foray is already set in stone here.
Again, the first aspect, the most important aspect and the most important goal is the product. It's not really the market. So we still try to focus on the product, and only then we are looking into the markets. So for us, the most important word still is innovation.
Let's also touch on your personal life, and I'd like to actually go back to the passing of Rolf Schneider. Obviously a very difficult time, but it seems that you just needed to rise above all of this because now you were running a company that had a very strong legacy. How did you overcome this?
I think it was relatively easy because we are a successful brand. We were successful. We could continue to just cruise the way we were cruising before. And of course the team, we are a leading team of 5 people. We stayed together. We hold together. We have the same philosophy. The board has the same philosophy. And again, you need a direction.
From an emotional perspective, how did you actually all pull together? I'm sure a big loss for the company, every single person working for Ulysse Nardin.
Well, I think we had to dig in, you know, and we had to think commercially, we had to think business, because we knew also for the family who owns the business, our part was to overcome the business challenges, and that's where we concentrated on.
And speaking of family, you have a family of your own. You have 3 children. How often do you actually see your family?
I don't see them often enough, you know, but when I see them intense. They are scattered all over the world. Some of them live in America, one of them lives in Switzerland, and one of them lives in Austria.
So it must be difficult to actually pull the family together.
Almost impossible, yeah.
With regards to your hobbies, and I always ask this to a lot of the captains that we speak to, is how you find a balance to lead such a strong brand and company, and also find balance within your personal life. Can it be done? And do you do this?
I think it can be done, but you have to somehow always be able to combine business with pleasure. If business wouldn't be pleasure for me, I couldn't do what I'm doing. I like fast sports, for example. I like fast hobbies. I couldn't be an a golf player would take too much time for you. You have to have something which is going to go fast.
High adrenaline. So tell us about, when you say fast sports, are we talking about
my
fast cars?
hobby right now is not cars, actually motorbikes. And I have a couple of motorbikes, and that's where my hobby is at the moment.
When it comes to moving location, where are you staying right now? I know that you've moved around the globe. Your favorite destination?
I always say my hobby is where my clothes are parked. And at the moment it's probably Switzerland. That's where I spend most time.
Any chance that you would ever think of moving to Africa?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
I know your wife lived in Cape Town for some time, actually was brought up here.
She was born and she grew up in Cape Town, and it's a country I could imagine myself living, absolutely, yes.
Given the fact that Rolf Schneider stayed at the company for such a long time, his family very entrenched in the company as well, in a sense, do you plan to spend the rest of your professional career at the company?
I hope so, actually, yes. Yeah, I'm very fascinated about watches. I'm fascinated about the mechanical aspect and the fashion aspect, which is kind of coming together. So I see myself in the watch industry, and hopefully with Ulysse Nardin for the rest, yes.
Let's just touch on the global economic scenario, and I'm sure you also keep a very close tab on it, because this is really what determines demand as well. You spoke of Europe. What is your sense with regards to the debt crisis and the fact that Greece is under the spotlight, peripheral Eurozone, and now moving into core Eurozone, starting to have the same debt issues? And this is actually a global phenomenon, because Japan and even the US is experiencing the same issue.
I think it goes even further. My concern about Europe is even a socio-economic turmoil. I could see there's some social problems which will come now because of that financial crisis. And that's where my concern is. My main concern actually at the moment is Europe.
Are you an overall optimist though? Do you think that Europe can overcome this? Do you think that the Eurozone can stay together?
Well, I think I'm an optimist when it comes to our business. You know, I have to concentrate and focus on our business. I cannot influence what's happening politically in Europe. I can influence what we are going to do with Ulysse Nardin. Yes, I am an optimist. Yeah.
And the biggest growth rates that you're expecting to come through, do you think it's going to emanate from Asia or the other exotic locations that you were talking of, sort of Eastern Europe, Russia?
I think in quantities it is definitely Asia. It's probably also India. India is a big market for us, a growing market for us. And then of course we have growth like here, but that's on a lower scale, you know. In the big scale, probably the growth is still going to be Asia.
Patrik, thank you so very much for joining us. It was
great
speaking with you today.
Thank you.
Much appreciated for your time. Patrik Hoffmann, the CEO of Ulysse Nardin, a true captain of an industry. Thank you so very much again for joining us. That's where we leave it for today. From me, Eleni Jokos, we'll see you next time.